In a world divided by borders, beliefs, and endless battles for power, there remains one truth we often forget. We are all human. Before we are citizens of any nation, followers of any faith, or members of any ideology, we are people. We laugh, we cry, we dream, we fear, and somewhere beneath the noise of politics and conflict, our shared humanity waits, silent but alive. It waits in the eyes of a child searching for safety, in the hands of a doctor holding life together in a war zone, in the quiet tears of a mother who has lost her home but not her hope. We live in an era of great intelligence, yet great ignorance. We build machines that think, but forget to feel. We reach for the stars but fail to hold each other on Earth. To be human is not just to exist, it is to care, to connect, and to create meaning from suffering. It is to recognize that every heartbeat, from New York to Nairobi, from Gaza to Kyiv, carries the same rhythm of life. Our survival has never depended on weapons, wealth, or borders. It has always depended on empathy, the invisible thread that binds us as one species, one story, one family. When a natural disaster strikes, a flood, an earthquake, a wildfire, notice what happens. Before governments react, before policies are written, ordinary people act. Strangers rush to help strangers. Hands reach out without asking about religion, race, or language. In those moments, humanity becomes one. It is this invisible thread, the unseen connection between hearts, that defines us. No algorithm can measure it. No machine can replace it. Philosophers from Confucius to Rumi have spoken of it. Rumi once said, "All religions, all this singing, one song, the differences are illusion and vanity." This ancient wisdom feels even more urgent today. Modern science, too, confirms what poets always knew, that we are wired for compassion. Neuroscientists talk about mirror neurons, cells in our brain that make us feel what others feel. When we see someone in pain, our brain lights up as if we are suffering too. Empathy isn't weakness, it's biology. But as the world becomes louder, with information, opinions, and online conflicts, we grow numb. We scroll past suffering as if it's background noise. The more we connect through screens, the less we connect through hearts. And yet, every act of kindness, every small gesture of care, resists that numbness. When one person chooses empathy over apathy, the thread strengthens. Think of the global moments that revealed our shared humanity. When the world sent aid to Haiti after the earthquake. When doctors from dozens of countries risked their lives to fight Ebola in Africa. When millions opened their homes to Ukrainian and Syrian refugees. Each act whispered a single message. We are not strangers. We are one. We live in a world more connected than ever before. Planes cross continents in hours. Messages travel the globe in seconds. And yet, our hearts are further apart than ever. Despite all progress, humanity still stands on the fragile line between unity and division. We divide ourselves by color, by creed, by language, and by land, forgetting that the earth beneath our feet knows no borders. Borders are human inventions. Invisible lines drawn on maps, defended by armies, guarded by fear, and remembered by history. But the wind crosses freely, the rivers flow without permission, and the stars shine on all, regardless of nationality. Beliefs, too, which were once meant to connect us to meaning, have become walls instead of bridges. Religions that teach compassion are now used to justify hate. Politics that promise equality are now tools of power. And media that could enlighten minds often fuel confusion and anger. The tragedy of our time is not lack of information. It's the abundance of misinformation, the manipulation of fear, and the blindness to our shared human story. In every era, power has sought to divide. Empires were built by setting one tribe against another, one race above another, one faith over the rest. Division is a strategy, because a divided people are easier to control than a united one. When we fight each other, we forget who profits from our division. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, we must learn to live together as brothers, or perish together as fools. Humanity today faces that same choice. Will we learn from the mistakes of history, or repeat them in new forms? Digital, cultural, ideological. Technology promised connection, but it has also built invisible walls inside our screens. Algorithms feed us what we already believe, making us prisoners of our own perspectives. We stop listening to understand and start listening only to reply. The internet has given everyone a voice, but not everyone uses it for truth. The louder the world becomes, the less we hear one another. We've mistaken being connected for being compassionate. And in that noise, humanity often disappears. Division has consequences far beyond politics. It bleeds into our schools, our communities, and even our hearts. It turns empathy into suspicion, and hope into hostility. In some places, people are still judged by the color of their skin. In others, by the passport they hold, or the accent in their voice. We create categories, forgetting that behind each label is a living soul. Someone's child, someone's parent, someone's dream. Wars begin not with weapons, but with words. Genocides are born not in battlefields, but in ideas. When we stop seeing others as human, we lose our own humanity too. History is a mirror, and if we dare to look into it, we'll see the same mistakes repeating. The Holocaust, Rwanda, Bosnia, Palestine, Ukraine, different lands, different times, but the same disease of division, the same failure of empathy. Every time we allow hate to define us and them, we set the stage for tragedy. And every time we choose compassion, we bend the course of history toward peace. Yet, despite all the fractures, humanity still finds a way to heal. In the darkest moments, the brightest lights appear. A doctor treating the enemy's child, a priest sheltering a refugee, a young activist speaking for the voiceless. The human spirit is stubborn. It refuses to surrender to hate. Even in war, there are stories of kindness that defy logic. A soldier carrying a wounded opponent to safety. Citizens forming human chains to protect strangers. Moments like these remind us. The heart recognizes humanity even when the world forgets. Our diversity is not our weakness. It is our wealth. The colors of our skin, the tones of our languages, the shapes of our traditions, they are threads in one vast human tapestry. When woven together, they create something beautiful. When torn apart, they reveal how fragile we are. To live in peace, we must first unlearn the illusions of separation. To be human is not to agree on everything. It is to understand that disagreement doesn't make us enemies. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. And that test is now. In a time when nations compete instead of cooperate, when people shout instead of listen, when truth itself is under siege, we must return to the simplest truth of all, that we belong to one another. Crisis. It is the moment when the world stops pretending, when wealth, status, and power fade, and what remains is the raw truth, that we are all vulnerable, and that survival is never a solo act. Throughout history, humanity's greatest lessons have emerged not in times of peace, but in moments of shared pain. When the world breaks, we are forced to see what truly matters. Each other. When the earth shakes or the sea rises, there are no rich or poor, no borders or beliefs. There are only people, searching for hope beneath the rubble. Think of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Waves did not ask for passports. They swept across 14 countries, and yet, in the aftermath, the world came together. Nations sent aid to strangers they had never met. Volunteers from every continent arrived to rebuild shattered coastlines. In crisis, we remember something ancient and beautiful, that compassion is instinct. When someone cries for help, the human heart answers before the mind calculates. Similarly, after the 2010 Haiti earthquake, countries that once stood divided stood united. Ordinary people sent money, food, and prayers. Rescue teams crossed oceans. For a brief moment, humanity remembered that we share this fragile planet, and that pain knows no nationality. But here rests the deeper truth. We shouldn't need a disaster to remember our shared humanity. The challenge is not how we react during tragedy, but how we treat each other when the headlines fade. When the world faced COVID-19, something extraordinary happened. For the first time in modern history, every nation, every city, every home faced the same invisible enemy. It didn't matter if you were in Paris or Pakistan, New York or Nairobi. The virus reminded us that we are connected in ways we often forget. We learned new words: lockdown, quarantine, social distancing. But we also rediscovered old truths: love, empathy, community. Doctors became heroes. Delivery workers became lifelines. Neighbors who had never spoken began checking on each other. The virus separated our bodies, but it reconnected our hearts. And yet, the pandemic also revealed our divisions. The unequal access to healthcare, vaccines, and opportunity. It showed that humanity still struggles with fairness, that while some had the luxury to stay home, others risked everything to survive. Still, amidst the chaos, there were countless acts of courage. Nurses who worked until exhaustion, scientists who shared research across borders, ordinary people making masks, delivering food, keeping hope alive when the world stood still. The pandemic was a painful reminder. We cannot survive alone. Not as individuals, not as nations. War is humanity's oldest wound, a mirror reflecting both our cruelty and our capacity for compassion. In Ukraine, families fled under bombardment, and strangers in Poland, Germany, and beyond opened their homes. When tragedy struck in Gaza, humanitarian workers risked their lives to bring food, medicine, and hope to those trapped between politics and pain. War dehumanizes. It turns faces into numbers, and suffering into statistics. But the stories behind those numbers still breathe. A nurse staying behind to tend to the wounded. A child offering her last piece of bread to a friend. A soldier helping an injured civilian from the opposing side. In those moments, humanity defies hatred. Every war is a lesson. That peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding. We cannot end violence by destroying our enemies. We end it by seeing them as human again. The floods in Pakistan, the wildfires in Australia, the droughts in Africa, the melting glaciers of the Arctic. These are not isolated tragedies. They are the planet's desperate plea for unity. Climate change doesn't care about politics or wealth. Its consequences cross oceans, its victims span generations. But amid destruction, something powerful is rising. A new generation that refuses to stay silent. From Greta Thunberg to the countless youth activists across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the young are teaching us a forgotten truth. The earth is not inherited from our ancestors. It is borrowed from our children. Every time people plant trees after a fire, or rebuild homes sustainably after a flood, they send a message louder than any speech, that healing the planet begins with healing our hearts. It's strange, isn't it? That pain, something so feared, can also unite. When one person falls, others rush to lift them. When one community suffers, others send help. This is the paradox of humanity. Our greatest strength is revealed when we are most fragile. Suffering can harden us, or soften us. It can make us bitter, or make us better. The choice lies within each of us. The lessons of crisis are clear. We cannot escape our interconnectedness. When one nation burns, the smoke touches us all. When one child goes hungry, the conscience of the world weakens. And when one act of kindness occurs, it sends ripples that can reach the other side of the world. Imagine a world where we didn't wait for disaster to act with compassion. Where empathy wasn't a reaction, but a habit. Where cooperation replaced competition. And humanity was our first identity, not our last. The crises of our age, pandemics, wars, climate change, are not just tragedies. They are teachers. They remind us of what we have forgotten. That progress without empathy is failure, and technology without humanity is emptiness. The world breaks, yes. But every break is also an opening. A chance to rebuild not just cities, but values. A chance to remember that our destinies are woven together by the invisible thread of shared existence. Because in the end, no crisis can truly destroy us, as long as we remember who we are. Humans, bound by love, sustained by hope, and capable of infinite renewal. We live in the most advanced age in human history. We hold in our hands devices more powerful than the computers that once guided rockets to the moon. We speak to machines that answer back. We live online, we think in pixels, and we dream in data. But with every leap in technology, a question echoes louder. Are we gaining the world, but losing our soul? Technology is not the enemy. It is the mirror, reflecting both our brilliance and our blindness. Every invention, from fire to the internet, has carried the same potential, to create or to destroy, to connect, or to control. When the first industrial machines replaced human hands, we called it progress. When the internet replaced distance, we called it revolution. And when artificial intelligence began to imitate thought, we called it the future. But somewhere in that evolution, we forgot to ask, what happens to the heart? We built systems to make life easier, but life itself has become noisier. We invented tools to connect humanity, but we often use them to divide it. The screen has become the new world. It glows in our palms, whispers through our ears, and watches while we sleep. We live in a time where attention is currency, and silence is rebellion. We scroll endlessly, not because we are curious, but because we are lonely. Every notification feels like a heartbeat, every like a small dose of validation. But what happens when the heart learns to depend on digital applause? What happens when human connection is replaced by algorithms that decide what we see, what we believe, and even what we feel? The danger of our time is not that machines will become human. It is that humans will become machines. When we lose empathy, when we automate emotion, when we replace presence with performance, we begin to forget what it means to be. AI can paint, write, compose, and even hold conversations. It can predict weather, diagnose diseases, and simulate emotion. But it cannot love. It cannot suffer. It cannot forgive. It can replicate human thought, but it cannot experience human feeling. And yet, we increasingly trust machines with decisions about justice, health, war, and truth. We give them control over the systems that govern our lives. If we are not careful, we might end up designing a world that is efficient, but heartless. The question is not whether technology will surpass human intelligence. The real question is, will humanity keep up with its own conscience? Because wisdom is not in data. It is in the space between right and wrong, where empathy lives. The internet connected the world, but it also amplified its divisions. We have access to more information than any generation before us, yet we struggle to find understanding. Digital platforms reward outrage over reflection. We are encouraged to react, not to reason, to speak, not to listen. We build followers, not friendships. We chase views, not vision. And slowly, we are becoming a species that speaks louder but says less. The tragedy is not that we have lost our voices. It's that we have forgotten the silence where meaning is born. Technology reflects us, our dreams, our fears, our desires. If we fill it with love, it will spread love. If we fill it with hate, it will magnify hate. A smartphone in one person's hand can be a tool of education, and in another's, a weapon of manipulation. The difference is not the device, it's the intention behind it. When we design technology without ethics, we create progress without purpose. And progress without purpose is just motion, not evolution. The true test of innovation is not how advanced our machines become, but how human we remain while using them. We stand at a crossroads. One path leads to a world where technology amplifies empathy, where it heals, teaches, and unites. The other path leads to a world where algorithms replace awareness, and the soul becomes secondary to the system. But the choice is still ours. Technology is only as moral as the hands that create it, and as ethical as the hearts that guide it. When a teacher uses digital tools to educate poor children, technology serves humanity. When a scientist uses AI to find cures, technology uplifts life. But when it's used to spread hate, manipulate truth, or invade privacy, it becomes a mirror of our moral decay. We must remember that machines may process data, but only humans can process compassion. In the coming years, robots will walk beside us, AI will drive our cars, and virtual worlds will blur the lines between real and unreal. But the human heart will remain the same, longing for connection, purpose, and meaning. As we build the future, we must teach our children not only to code, but to care, not only to invent, but to imagine, not only to consume information, but to cultivate wisdom. Because the future of humanity will not be written in lines of code, it will be written in the language of compassion. The story of humanity has always been one of balance, between creation and conscience, between invention and intention. We cannot stop technological progress, nor should we. but we can shape it, guide it, and humanize it. Let our technology serve life, not replace it. Let it unite hearts, not isolate minds. Let it remind us that while machines can simulate emotion, only humans can feel it. The soul of humanity is not found in circuits or code. It lives in kindness, it breathes in empathy, it survives in the courage to care, even when convenience tells us not to. Because in the end, technology is just a reflection of the hands that build it and the hearts that wield it. If we lose compassion, we lose everything that made us human in the first place. There was once a time when the earth seemed infinite, when oceans stretched endlessly, forests stood forever, and the sky looked too vast to ever be touched by human hands. But today, the truth is impossible to ignore. Our planet is not infinite, it is fragile. Every wildfire, every drought, every melting glacier is not just a sign of environmental collapse. It is a cry for compassion, a cry from the only home humanity has ever known. The story of climate change is not just about carbon or data. It's about people, families losing homes to floods, farmers watching their crops wither, children breathing polluted air. It is about humanity, Seth's relationship with nature, a relationship that has turned from harmony to exploitation. We built industries that fed billions, but also poisoned rivers. We invented machines that gave us power, but took away balance. We pursued comfort, and in doing so, we forgot connection. Now, the consequences of centuries of neglect are here, and they are not coming for the future. They are happening now. Look around. The signs are everywhere. Ice caps that took millennia to form are vanishing in decades. Forests, the lungs of our planet, are burning to ash. The oceans rise higher each year, and entire islands are disappearing beneath the waves. From Pakistan's devastating floods to Australia's wildfires, from African droughts to European heat waves, climate change respects no borders, no politics, no power. It is the great equalizer and the great test of our humanity. Because the earth is not dying, it is being killed, and the killer wears the face of human indifference. Climate change is not only a scientific issue, it is a moral one. It asks us, what kind of ancestors do we want to be? Will we leave behind a world of beauty or a wasteland of regret? The richest nations emit the most, but the poorest suffer the most. Children who contributed nothing to this crisis are paying the highest price. Injustice is written in the wind, the water, and the soil. If we ignore this imbalance, we lose not only the planet, we lose our humanity. Long before the words climate change were ever spoken, indigenous communities understood a truth we've forgotten: that humanity is not above nature. We are a part of it. To them, the earth is not a resource. It is a relative, a living, breathing being deserving of respect. They taught, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. This wisdom, buried beneath centuries of greed, is now resurfacing as our greatest hope. Because technology may save us, but wisdom will guide us. The climate crisis is universal, but not equal. Developed nations built their wealth on centuries of industrialization, while developing nations now face the cost. When floods destroy homes in Bangladesh or Pakistan, those people are not victims of nature, they are victims of neglect. The truth is simple. The fight against climate change cannot succeed if justice is not at its core. We must shift from me to we, from competition to collaboration. Because the atmosphere does not recognize nationality, it only recognizes humanity. In this struggle, technology stands at a crossroads. It can either heal or harm. Renewable energy, electric vehicles, sustainable architecture, these are the tools that can lead us to a cleaner tomorrow. But technology without ethics is dangerous. It can create new inequalities, where the wealthy live in green comfort while the poor remain trapped in toxic environments. True progress is not measured by innovation alone, but by inclusion, who benefits, and who is left behind. The most powerful movement for climate action today does not come from governments or corporations. It comes from the youth. From the streets of Stockholm to the coasts of the Pacific, young voices are rising, demanding a livable future. They are not waiting for permission to care. They are the conscience of a generation that refuses to inherit despair. When Greta Thunberg stood before world leaders and said, How dare you? She wasn't just speaking to politicians. She was speaking to all of us. Every young activist, every protest, every planted tree is a message to the world. We still believe in tomorrow. We have forgotten the simple joys that make us human. The sound of rain, the scent of soil, the warmth of sunlight. We have traded wonder for convenience. But to heal the planet, we must first fall in love with it again. When we plant a tree, we are not just restoring nature, we are restoring hope. When we protect a river, we are protecting the lifeblood of our species. And when we choose kindness over consumption, we remind ourselves that the planet's healing begins with the healing of the human heart. Awareness is no longer enough. We must act, and act together. Change begins in small decisions. Choosing sustainability, reducing waste, supporting clean energy and demanding accountability. But most importantly, it begins with empathy. The realization that every choice we make affects lives we may never see. The planet does not need saving. We do. And by saving it, we save ourselves. Imagine a world where clean air is a human right. Where oceans are blue again, forests green again, and the sky no longer burns with smoke. That vision is not naive. It is necessary, because in the end, this planet is not just our home. It is our shared soul. If we can learn to protect it not out of fear, but out of love, then perhaps, after all, humanity will prove itself worthy of the world that gave it life. From the dawn of civilization, humanity has wrestled with one timeless question. Can we ever live in a world where all people are truly equal? Empires have risen and fallen, revolutions have been fought, and generations have marched, cried, and sacrificed, all in pursuit of that single dream. Justice is not only a law, it is a heartbeat. It is the rhythm of a society that values every human life, no matter their color, class, gender, or faith. It is what keeps civilization humane. Justice is not revenge. It is not punishment. It is balance, the recognition that every human being deserves dignity, respect, and opportunity. When justice dies, humanity suffers. When equality fades, compassion weakens. And when one group's pain is ignored, the entire moral fabric of the world begins to tear. True justice is not measured by how we treat the powerful, but by how we treat the powerless. As Nelson Mandela once said, as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. Look around our modern world. We speak of progress, but inequality still shapes every corner of it. The rich grow richer, while the poor struggle for survival. In one city, skyscrapers kiss the clouds. In another, children sleep hungry beneath them. Some have access to the best healthcare, while others die from diseases long curable. Gender inequality still denies girls the right to education, and racial prejudice still poisons hearts in every nation. We have built economies stronger than ever, yet empathy seems weaker than before. Billions are spent on weapons, while millions go without clean water. The priorities of the world reveal its moral blindness. Poverty is not just the absence of money, it is the absence of opportunity, safety, and dignity. It is a silent violence that kills more dreams than wars ever could. When a child grows up without education, the future loses a mind that could have changed the world. When a mother skips meals so her children can eat, it is not charity the world owes her. It is justice. As long as one child sleeps hungry, no nation can claim true success. Ending poverty is not an act of generosity. It is the fulfillment of humanity's most basic promise, that every life has equal worth. Throughout history, there have always been voices that refused to be silenced. People who stood up when silence was easier, who chose justice over comfort and truth over fear. Martin Luther King Jr. marched for racial equality. Malala Yousafzai spoke for girls' education. Nelson Mandela endured prison for the dream of freedom. And countless unnamed heroes, farmers, workers, teachers, and children fought their small battles every day to make the world a little fairer. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, in the courage of a protester, the honesty of a journalist, or the compassion of a citizen who refuses to look away. The fight for equality is not over. It has simply changed shape. Now it lives in hashtags, in classrooms, in parliaments, in every voice that says, enough. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations in 1948, was more than just a document. It was humanity's collective promise to itself, that never again would the world stand silent in the face of injustice. It declared that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Simple words, but powerful enough to challenge empires and awaken nations. Yet decades later, that promise remains unfulfilled. In many corners of the world, people are still persecuted for what they believe, for who they love, for the color of their skin, or for simply daring to speak the truth. Freedom is not a gift, it is a right. But it is a right that must be defended, not just by laws, but by conscience. Women make up half of humanity, and yet, in many places, they are still treated as less than whole. From unequal pay to gender-based violence, from child marriage to denied education. The story of inequality continues to echo through generations, but there is hope. In classrooms where girls now sit where they once could not. In workplaces where women lead with courage and vision. In parliaments where their voices shape laws once made to silence them. As the poet Maya Angelou wrote, "Each time a woman stands up for herself, she stands up for all women." Equality is not a favor. It is justice long overdue, and when women rise, the entire world rises with them. Justice today has evolved beyond laws and courts. It lives in the fight for climate justice, where youth demand action for a dying planet. It lives in the movement for racial equality, for fair wages, for freedom of speech, for refugees seeking safety across borders. Justice is no longer just about punishment. It's about protection, inclusion, and compassion. We can no longer separate social justice from human survival. If the earth burns, if inequality grows, if truth dies, then justice itself becomes impossible. The courage to care. To fight for justice is not to be perfect. It is to be human enough to care and brave enough to act. You don't need to be a leader to stand for what's right. Every small act of fairness ripples outward. A teacher giving equal voice to every student. A citizen helping a refugee feel at home. A person speaking against discrimination even when it's unpopular. In a world full of indifference, compassion is a form of rebellion. And that rebellion keeps humanity alive. True equality will not be achieved by law alone, but by love. When we begin to see the humanity in each other, the systems of oppression begin to crumble. A just world is not one where everyone has the same wealth. It's one where everyone has the same worth. Imagine a future where a child's dreams are not limited by where they're born, where justice is not delayed until tragedy strikes, and where equality is not a slogan, but a shared way of life. That is the vision we must build, a civilization where humanity itself is the greatest measure of progress. Because as long as one person remains oppressed, the freedom of all remains incomplete. And as long as one voice is silenced, the song of humanity remains unfinished. There is a strange irony in human history. We have learned to split the atom, but not to share the earth. We can send satellites across galaxies, but not compassion across borders. And in this contradiction lies the tragedy of our time, that humanity, capable of creating paradise, still chooses destruction. From the ancient battlefields of Troy to the modern ruins of Gaza and Ukraine, war has been humanity's darkest language. Every generation swears it will be the last to fight, and yet, every generation finds itself at war again. We fight for land, for power, for faith, for pride. But beneath every banner, beneath every reason, the cost is always the same. Human lives. A mother searching for her child in the rubble. A soldier whispering a final prayer. A refugee carrying their home in memory alone. War does not end when the guns go silent. It echoes through generations, scarring the souls of the living and the unborn. There are no winners in war, only survivors. Every victory built on blood eventually turns to dust. Empires fall, borders shift, flags fade, but the pain remains, in the stories of those who lost everything. A true civilization is not one that conquers others, but one that conquers the need to conquer. As Albert Einstein once warned, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, But World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Because if we destroy each other with nuclear fire, there will be nothing left to rebuild. No nations, no ideologies, no victors. Only silence. We live in an age where a single decision can erase entire cities in moments. The invention of nuclear weapons gave humanity godlike power, but without godlike wisdom. The Cold War may have ended, but the threat has not. Today, thousands of nuclear warheads remain pointed at our fragile planet, waiting in stillness for human error. The recent conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, and tensions between Iran and Israel, remind us how dangerously close we still are to a catastrophe that would end not just nations, but humanity itself. Nuclear war is not an option. It is annihilation. And yet, the world still invests billions in weapons, while millions of children starve. That is not defense. It is moral blindness. Behind every political headline, there is a broken human story. A child in Ukraine drawing tanks and bombs instead of stars. A mother in Gaza digging through debris for her family. A father in Syria watching his home crumble into ashes. They are not enemies. They are us. Their pain is our reflection. The earth bleeds not from nature, but from the wounds we inflict upon ourselves. If we truly call ourselves civilized, then peace is not a choice. It is our obligation. Peace is not just the absence of war. It is the presence of justice, compassion, and understanding. It is built not by treaties, but by trust. Not by governments, but by people. Peace begins in classrooms where children learn empathy, in neighborhoods where differences are respected, in hearts where forgiveness replaces hate. As Mahatma Gandhi said, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind." The path to peace begins when we stop seeing others as enemies and start seeing them as extensions of ourselves. Every war begins with silence. The silence of understanding, of listening, of empathy. But dialogue is the bridge that saves us. When leaders choose conversation over confrontation, when citizens choose cooperation over conflict, peace becomes possible. In every corner of the world, from peace talks in Geneva to local community dialogues, humanity has proven one truth. Words can heal what weapons cannot. Peace is not the duty of diplomats alone. It is the responsibility of every human being. When we choose kindness online, we are making peace. When we challenge prejudice, we are making peace. When we vote, donate, or speak for those who cannot, we are building a culture of peace. Because peace is not a destination, it is a daily act of courage. We must teach our children not only how to win, but how to forgive. Not only how to fight, but how to understand. That is the education the world needs most. Even in the darkest moments, peace has found a way. After the world wars, nations came together to form the United Nations, an imperfect but powerful symbol of hope. Former enemies became allies. Walls were torn down. People rebuilt cities and lives with courage that defied despair. That same spirit still lives in us. The belief that even after destruction, humanity can choose creation. The future will not be written by those who build bombs, but by those who build bridges. By the teacher who educates for tolerance. By the journalist who speaks truth. By the citizen who refuses to hate. The fate of the world will not be decided in war rooms, but in living rooms, in classrooms, in hearts. Because peace is not a miracle. It is a mindset. It begins the moment we believe that compassion is stronger than conquest. Let us imagine a world where peace is not a dream, but the daily rhythm of life. Where nations compete not in arms, but in kindness. Where borders exist only on maps, not in hearts. Let us remember that every war ever fought began with fear, and every peace ever achieved began with courage. Courage to forgive. Courage to listen. Courage to love those we've been taught to fear. Because in the end, there is only one war worth fighting. The war against our own indifference. And there is only one true victory. The victory of peace. The greatest weapon humanity has ever created is not the sword or the bomb. It is the mind. And the greatest hope we still hold is not in wealth nor in technology, but in education. For education is not just about learning facts. It is about awakening the soul of a civilization. It is the bridge between ignorance and understanding, between division and unity, between fear and empathy. Education was never meant to create workers. It was meant to create thinkers. It was never meant to train us to compete, but to teach us to coexist. True education is not the memorization of information, but the cultivation of wisdom. It is what teaches a child not just how to earn a living, but how to live a life. The classroom is where the future begins, not in textbooks, but in the hearts of those who dare to imagine a better world. As Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Education does not begin or end in schools. It begins at home, in communities, in every conversation that teaches compassion. When a parent teaches a child honesty, when a teacher inspires curiosity, when a society values truth over propaganda, education lives. But when learning becomes only a competition, when grades replace growth, when exams matter more than empathy, then we lose the true meaning of knowledge. The purpose of learning must always be to uplift, never to divide. The world has many intelligent people, but too few wise ones. We have mastered science, but forgotten sensitivity. We know how to build rockets, but not how to raise kind children. Education must evolve beyond the intellect. It must educate the heart. Because empathy is the highest form of intelligence. It is the ability to understand the pain of another, to feel what facts alone cannot teach. When education is rooted in empathy, we raise generations that heal instead of harm, create instead of destroy, and love instead of fear. Around the world, millions of children still grow up without access to quality education. In some countries, classrooms crumble under poverty. In others, children walk miles to reach a single book. And in conflict zones, education becomes a casualty of war. This is not just an economic failure. It is a moral one. Because when a child is denied education, the future itself is denied progress. Every child left behind is a dream the world will never see. The rise of technology has changed everything. From online learning to virtual universities, knowledge has become more accessible than ever. A student in Africa can now learn from a professor in Tokyo. A young girl in Pakistan can attend a science class from her phone. But even this progress carries a warning. Digital education cannot replace human guidance. A computer can provide information, but not inspiration. It can teach formulas, but not forgiveness. For education to truly evolve, technology must serve humanity, not the other way around. We live in a time when people know how to make a living, but not how to make life meaningful. Schools teach how to succeed, but not how to serve. We produce experts, but not necessarily good human beings. The goal of education should not be to fill minds with data, but to light them with purpose. To teach children that happiness is not found in wealth, but in wisdom. That success is not measured by status, but by the impact they make on others. Every great thinker, leader, and artist was once a student guided by a teacher. Teachers are the unsung architects of the future. They don't just transfer knowledge, they shape souls. A good teacher does more than explain a lesson. They awaken curiosity, ignite imagination, and plant seeds of compassion. As the poet Henry Adams said, "A teacher affects eternity. They can never tell where their influence stops." If the world truly wishes to evolve, we must honor teachers not as workers, but as guardians of human growth. Empathy is not taught in most schools, but it should be. Imagine if children learned not only mathematics and science, but also kindness, gratitude, and emotional understanding. Imagine if empathy was as valued as intelligence. When we teach empathy, we prevent cruelty before it begins. We replace judgment with understanding, and violence with compassion. Because in the end, it is not what we know that makes us human. It is how we care. In a world divided by race, religion, and politics, education is the one power that can unite us. When a child in Japan studies the same planet as a child in Brazil, when a student in Nigeria learns about climate change, when a girl in Afghanistan reads the same history as a boy in France, they begin to see the truth. We are one species sharing one story. Education dissolves ignorance, and ignorance is the root of fear. If we can educate the world, we can end hatred itself. The true evolution of humanity is not biological. It is moral. We will not evolve when we grow stronger, but when we grow kinder. We will not advance by discovering new planets, but by learning to care for this one. Each generation inherits not only the Earth, but also the task of improving the human heart. Education is how we pass that torch, how we transform survival into significance. The destiny of humanity is written not in our weapons, but in our wisdom. Every era in history begins with a question, and ours is this. What kind of humans do we wish to be? We stand at a turning point unlike any before. Technology has connected us, but hearts have drifted apart. We've conquered distance, but not our differences. Yet in every challenge lies a choice. To continue building walls, or to start building bridges. The dawn of a new humanity will not come from inventions or ideologies, but from a return to something timeless, our shared compassion. We've seen the world fracture, through wars that scar the innocent, through greed that poisons the planet, and through hatred that blinds us to our own reflection. But pain has a purpose. It teaches. And the greatest civilizations have always risen not from comfort, but from crisis. Perhaps the chaos of our age is not the end, but the beginning of understanding. Because sometimes, humanity must fall apart to remember what truly holds it together. Each of us is a thread in the great fabric of existence. When one part tears, the whole weakens. When one person suffers, the world trembles, even if silently. We often wait for leaders to fix the world, but leadership begins in the mirror. Every act of kindness, every word of truth, every moment of empathy is a vote for the kind of humanity we want to create. The future is not built by governments. It is built by people who still believe that love can change the course of history. Progress is meaningless without peace. A world that advances in science but regresses in spirit is not evolving. It is escaping itself. True progress is when a nation's strength is measured not by its weapons, but by its wisdom, not by its armies, but by its artists, teachers, and healers. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the presence of understanding. It is when we see our reflection in others and decide to protect it. Humanity's health is bound to the health of the earth. When we harm nature, we wound ourselves. The rivers that dry, the forests that burn, the air that chokes, these are not distant tragedies. They are our collective cries for balance. To heal the planet, we must first heal the human heart. Because the earth doesn't need us to survive, we need it to live. And in saving it, we rediscover the humility that defines true humanity. The beauty of humanity lies in its diversity, in its languages, beliefs, colors, and dreams. We were never meant to be identical. We were meant to be interconnected. Like instruments in an orchestra, our differences are not noise. They are harmony waiting to be played. When we learn to listen instead of argue, to understand instead of judge, we unlock the symphony of coexistence. Hope is not naive. It is necessary. It is what allows a child in a war zone to smile, a teacher in poverty to keep teaching, and a generation lost in noise to still dream. Hope is the heartbeat of humanity. Without it, we are machines. With it, we are miracles. To hope is to resist despair. To hope is to declare that light still exists, even when the world goes dark. The future is not a place we reach. It is something we create every day. Through every choice to forgive, to listen, to help, we sculpt the world we'll leave behind. We may come from different nations, but we share one home, Earth. We may follow different faiths, but we share one truth, compassion. We may speak different languages, but we share one voice, humanity. One day, historians will look back and judge not our power, but our purpose. They will ask, did we care for one another when it mattered most? Did we choose peace over pride? Did we value people more than profit? The answer to those questions is being written right now, by us. Because humanity is not something we inherit. It is something we choose, moment by moment. And when we choose compassion over cruelty, empathy over ego, understanding over indifference, we become the proof that love is still possible. In the end, no religion, nation, or race will matter. The only thing history will remember is whether we remembered to be human. So let this be our promise to the world, that in the face of division, we will choose unity. In the face of darkness, we will choose light. And in the face of despair, we will choose to hope. Because the story of humanity is not over. It is being written in our kindness, our courage, and our capacity to love. Subscribe for more deep dive explainers on humanity.